Welcome to Life Stories. Sometimes, a single phone call can change everything. For years, Sarah built a peaceful life far away from her past until one unexpected call from her estranged sister, Jessica, pulled her back into a world she had tried to forget. A family funeral, old wounds, and a long-buried betrayal resurface, forcing Sarah to confront the painful truth about her past and her future. Will she finally find closure? Or will the past drag her back in? Subscribe to the channel to begin today's story with Life Stories, and don't forget to stay tuned for more incredible real-life tales. I never thought a simple phone call could change my life so completely. But that's exactly what happened. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Chicago. The kind where the golden leaves swirl gently along the pavement, carried by a soft breeze. The city, always alive with movement, seemed to slow down just a little as the season shifted. I had just settled down on my couch with a cup of tea, savoring the rare moment of peace, when my phone lit up with an unknown number. At first, I considered ignoring it. Who answers random calls these days? But something in me, some deep, instinctual pull, told me to pick up. And so, with a sigh, I did. The voice on the other end froze me in place. "Sarah, it's Jessica." For a moment, my heart stopped. The voice was unmistakable, even though it had been years since I'd last heard it. Polite, composed, but laced with something else, something I couldn't quite define. "Jessica," I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. My fingers tightened around my mug, though my tea was already forgotten. "What's going on?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach twist with unease. Then she spoke the words that sent a chill through me. "Grandma passed away." I didn't speak. Couldn't. Our grandmother, the one person in my family who had always been there for me, who had loved me unconditionally, was gone. A lump formed in my throat as I struggled to process it. But before I could even begin to grieve, Jessica's voice cut through my thoughts again. And this time, there was a sharpness to it that made my skin crawl. "I just wanted to let you know," she added, her tone almost mocking. "I'm sure you're busy with your modest life." I could almost see the smirk playing at her lips, the condescension in her eyes. The words hit me like a slap. I swallowed hard, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "Thank you for letting me know," I said coolly. "I'll make arrangements to come." It wasn't just the words that hurt. It was the flood of memories they brought back. Jessica had always been the golden child. She had our father's favor, his attention, and an effortless charm that made everything come easy to her. I, on the other hand, had spent my childhood in her shadow, always trying to prove myself, always coming up short. She was the one who could do no wrong. And when she betrayed me in the worst possible way, my father still stood by her side. Jessica hadn't just stolen my fiancé. She had taken him, manipulated him, drawn him into her web, and left me standing alone in the wreckage of what I thought was my future. And my family had let it happen. No apologies. No remorse. That was the moment I had walked away. Not just from her, but from all of them. For years, I had built my own life, far away from the chaos of my past. I had married Mark, a kind, gentle, and fiercely loyal man who worked in tech. We had a small but warm home in the suburbs, filled with love and laughter. Our daughter, Lily, was 5 years old and already a little artist, sharing her colorful creations on her growing YouTube channel. My life wasn't flashy. It wasn't filled with designer clothes, luxury cars, or the constant thirst for validation that Jessica seemed to thrive on. But it was real. It was full of love. And I was happy. At least, I had been. Until now. Hearing Jessica's voice again was like stepping back into a storm I had fought so hard to escape. And yet, as much as I wanted to ignore her, I couldn't ignore this. Grandma was gone. The one person who had seen me not as the overlooked daughter, not as Jessica's lesser counterpart, but as my own person. She had been my anchor, My quiet support when everything else in my family had felt like a battle. Losing her felt like losing the last connection to a part of my life that had ever felt safe. And now, because of that, I had no choice but to return to the place I had sworn I would never go back to. Over the next few days, I tried to prepare myself. Packing my bag wasn't the hardest part, it was the emotional baggage I knew I'd be carrying with me. Mark held me close the night before I left. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I hesitated, pressing my forehead against his chest. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I have to. For Grandma." He didn't push. He just kissed my hair and whispered, "Whatever happens, just remember you're not alone in this." The next morning, as I boarded my flight to Denver, my hands trembled slightly. I wasn't just going home for a funeral. I was walking back into the past I had spent years running from. And deep down, I knew that this wasn't just about saying goodbye to Grandma. It was about everything that had been left unsaid. The flight to Denver felt longer than it was. Maybe it was the weight of old memories pressing against me. Or maybe it was the quiet dread of facing Jessica again. Either way, by the time the plane landed, my nerves were frayed. As I stepped out into the cool autumn air, I braced myself. The city hadn't changed much, but I had. It had been years since I'd last been here. And yet, the moment I saw the familiar streets, the old ache returned, the feeling of never quite belonging, of always playing second to my sister's shining presence. I took a deep breath and hailed a cab. The ride to my family's home was silent except for the hum of the radio. I barely noticed the passing scenery, too lost in thought. When the car pulled up in front of the house, I hesitated before stepping out. It looked exactly the same. A two-story house with a wraparound porch. The white paint slightly faded but still elegant. The windows glowed warmly in the dimming afternoon light. But it wasn't comforting. If anything, it felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting. I wasn't ready, but I walked forward anyway. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with grief, nostalgia, and something unspoken, tension. Maybe. Or the ghosts of old resentments. The house was filled with relatives. Some I barely recognized. Others I had actively avoided. I saw sympathetic nods, polite smiles. But there was also something else in their gazes. Curiosity. They weren't just here to mourn Grandma. They were watching me. I was the one who had left. The one who had chosen exile over family. And now, I was back. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move through the crowd. Then, I saw her. Jessica. She stood near a group of people, effortlessly commanding their attention, just as she always had. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her posture radiating confidence. She hadn't changed. And yet, the moment her eyes met mine, something flickered in them. "Sarah," she said, smiling in that way she always did, polite, but insincere. I forced a tight smile. "Jessica." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes scanning me. "It's been a long time." "Yes, it has," I replied, keeping my voice even. "How have you been?" Her tone was light, but there was an undercurrent to it. Something unreadable. "I've been good," I said simply. Jessica's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smirk but wasn't far from it. "I heard you moved to, where was it again?" "Oh, right, Chicago. Suburbs. Wasn't it?" The way she said it. Like my life was a quaint little thing. Insignificant compared to hers. I refused to take the bait. "Yes. Mark and I have built a really wonderful life there." Her smile didn't waver, but I saw the briefest flash of something in her eyes. Annoyance. Maybe. Or something deeper. "That's nice," she said smoothly. "And your daughter? Lily. Was it?" I saw her YouTube channel. Quite adorable. I stiffened. Jessica didn't give compliments unless they served a purpose. Before I could respond, she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough so that only I could hear. You know, people were really surprised when they heard you were coming back. After all these years. There it was. The unspoken accusation. I met her gaze evenly. Grandma was important to me. I wouldn't miss this. Jessica held my stare for a moment, then gave a small shrug, as if dismissing whatever tension had begun to form. Well, it'll be nice having you here, even if it's just for a little while. With that, she turned away, effortlessly slipping back into conversation with the others, as if our exchange had been nothing more than pleasantries. But my heart was pounding, because in that brief moment, I had seen it. Something was off. Jessica had always been good at controlling the narrative, at making sure she was the one on top. But now, there was something different, an edge to her. A tension beneath the surface. Something was wrong. And for the first time since I had stepped back into this house, I realized that this wasn't just about Grandma's funeral. Jessica had another reason for reaching out to me. I just didn't know what it was yet. The weight of the house settled on my shoulders the moment I stepped deeper inside. It smelled the same: wood polish, faint traces of cinnamon, and something older. Something that felt like history itself. It was as if time had barely touched this place. Yet everything about it felt different. Maybe it wasn't the house that had changed. Maybe it was just me. I made my way through the crowded rooms, offering polite nods and soft smiles to relatives who barely knew me anymore. Some greeted me with warmth, others with hesitance. But behind every conversation, I felt the same unspoken question lingering: why are you really here? I wasn't sure I had the answer myself. Then I saw my mother. She stood near the fireplace, her fingers lightly grazing the edge of a framed photo of Grandma. When she looked up and saw me, her lips parted slightly, as if unsure of what to say. It had been years since we had spoken, and in that moment, all the distance between us felt impossibly wide. "Mom," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "Sarah," she breathed, taking a hesitant step forward. I wasn't sure if she was going to hug me, but then Jessica appeared at her side, effortlessly slipping between us like a barrier that had always been there. "Mom, Aunt Linda is asking for you," Jessica said, her voice all warmth and smooth control. "She's in the kitchen." My mother hesitated for a second, glancing between us, then offered me a small, uncertain smile. "We'll talk later, sweetheart." I gave a tight nod, but the moment was gone before I could hold on to it. Jessica turned back to me, her expression unreadable. "This must feel strange for you," she mused, tilting her head slightly. "I'm here for Grandma," I said firmly. "Of course." Her lips curved into something that might have been sympathy, but I knew better. Before I could respond, the murmurs in the room shifted, and I realized the eulogies were beginning. We gathered in the large living room, where Grandma's presence still seemed to linger in the air. One by one, family members stepped forward, sharing their memories of her, the warmth she brought, the way she made everyone feel like they mattered. I listened, my heart aching with every word, remembering how she had been my safe place in a family that never truly saw me. Then, Jessica spoke. She stood with effortless grace, her voice soft, measured. "Grandma was the heart of our family," she said, her eyes glistening just enough to be convincing. "She loved all of us, guided us, and believed in the strength of family." I stiffened. She was good. Too good. The way she spoke, the way she commanded the room, it was the same way she had always done everything, perfectly, effortlessly. And yet, I could hear something underneath it. Something almost rehearsed. I had spent years trying to forget the way she could shape reality with just her words. But sitting there, listening to her speak, I remembered. She wasn't just saying goodbye to Grandma. She was setting the stage for something else. And whatever it wasn't going to be good. When the eulogies ended, people scattered into smaller conversations, sharing quiet memories. offering comfort. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of something unseen. That's when Jessica found me again. You didn't say anything, she noted. Her expression carefully neutral. I didn't think it was necessary, I said. My voice steady. Jessica smiled, just a little. Just enough for me to catch the glint of something behind it. Well, I suppose not everyone needs the spotlight. I exhaled slowly. What do you want, Jessica? Her smile didn't fade. Nothing. Just wondering how long you're staying. There it was again, that edge beneath her words. Something calculating. Something careful. I didn't know what Jessica was up to. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just about Grandma. She had a plan. And whatever it was, I wasn't going to like it. As I walked away from my family home for the last time, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and something I hadn't expected, peace. Jessica's perfect life had finally cracked, revealing the truth beneath the surface. The years of competition, manipulation, and betrayal had led her nowhere. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt free. I had come back to say goodbye to Grandma. But in the process, I had reclaimed a part of myself. I wasn't the girl living in Jessica's shadow anymore. I had my own life, filled with love, warmth, and true happiness. As I got into the car with Mark and Lily, I knew one thing for certain: my past no longer controlled me. My future was my own. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring life stories.